Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest country singers of all time, my special guest, Merle Haggard. Merle. Thank you. Hello, brother. Thank you. How you doing? Good to see you, my friend. Have a seat. Merle, do you remember that magic night when you and Marty sang?
Like it was last night. Yeah, sure do.
You know, he came in wearing that horse blanket, that wild coat, and I think he said...
Blue plaid sports coat.
Yeah, he said to me, he said, well, I may not out-sing him, but I sure outdressed him. But that was magic that night. You wrote that song originally for him, didn't you?
I wrote it.
Well, with him in mind.
No, I wrote it with, it was begging to you that sort of was like, if you sit down to write a song and you say, I want to sing it, and I want it to be something like Folsom Prison Blues, or I want it to be something like San Antonio Rose. Well, I said, I want this to be something like Begging to You.
Okay.
And that was the inspiration for the melody that came, and it kind of wrote itself. It was there when the words was done. The melody was already with me, and Bonnie'd gone to get a hamburger, and she came back, and I was sitting in my shorts in the middle of the bed, and I sang her this song, and she cried. And it was actually written on a paper bag. I tore the bag open and wrote the words down there. And
I understand there are over 400 recordings now of Today I Started Loving You Again.
There's been a lot of great recordings of it, and a lot of great artists have recorded it.
I want to go back to that night with Marty Robbins. Let me ask you a question. In your road show, do you still do impressions? Do you ever do those anymore? Impressions?
I do everything I can. I use every trick I got. I don't do them every night. If the occasion falls to where it feels good to do them, if I run out of other things to do.
The plane, and you took me all over Bakersfield and showed me bits and pieces of your life, and we went to this boxcar which had been made into a house. And this was where you were born. Tell me about that.
Well, in 1935, following or actually still in the middle of the Dust Bowl, my family moved to California, and Dad went to work for Santa Fe Railroad out there, and was part of the big migration that took place in those days. And Bakersfield was nothing but a desert then, and a railroad that ran through the edge of a little town called Oildale, which was next to Bakersfield, separated by Kern River, where the song Kern River comes from. And there was nothing out there except sagebrush and an old railroad track that ran down into the oil fields. And there was a vacant lot that was for sale, and it had an old boxcar that sat on it. It was a 40-foot Santa Fe reefer, is what it was. And my father went to the owner of that property and bargained with her to let him pay it off over the next few years. And he bought it from her for $500. Bought the lot and with that old boxcar on it. Well, Dad was a carpenter and a man with his hands, and he could build and he could do anything. So he made that into a home, and he built a front on it, and he built a back on it, and it was shaped like a T. And from the air, you couldn't have told what it was. But as I showed you around behind, you can still see the old metal components on the end of the boxcar there, and it was made out of wood.
This is your baby picture, Merle. Looks like you're fresh out of the box there.
Yeah.
And this is at one year. This was taken in 1938.
Yeah, I was getting ready to go on stage there.
Every kid in the world has a picture like this.
Yeah. Where
he's lost his teeth. And I believe on the back of the photograph it says you're 7 years old here. You remember these?
Right. I remember the time period. It was really, I had a great set of parents. My mother never left my side from the time I was born till I ran off from home when I was 11 years old. That's the first time I ever. And my dad died when I was 9, and he was I wish I could have shown him off.
How old was he when he passed away?
He was only 46. I think the result of a car collision that caused him to have a growth that caused a cerebral hemorrhage, and he died of a cerebral hemorrhage in about a week. He was very healthy.
How old are you in this picture? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I was about the same age as that other one, about 6 or 7. And
your father's a very handsome fellow there.
Yeah, he was.
He was a fiddle player too, wasn't he?
Played fiddle, played guitar, played like Merle Travis, and sang Jimmy Rogers songs and yodeled.
Miss Flossie, a beautiful lady. And I went back and reread your book. Although the book came out in 1981, it covers all this period. The book, Sing Me Back Home. And the thing I got out of this is that the death of your father was one of the most devastating things that ever happened to you. It took you a long time to get over that.
I had a lot of things happen to me over my life that have been hard to take, you know, and there was never anything that compared to the grief that caused me. We were close, and I was just nearing the age that I didn't have no idea how much I needed a father, but I guess, you know, things are laid out for you. I believe in predestiny, and I think that he had to go in order for me to get out and do what I did. I guess I might not have ever been in trouble. I might not have known what it was like to be in places I needed to know what it was like so I could write these songs or something. I don't know, but I sure did miss my dad, and I still do.
Your mama, the mama that tried. Boy, what a great tribute to her that song is. You know, and I listened to every song in this Capitol box set.
Let's show that on.
Oh, excuse me. It's called Down Every Road, and it's a box set, and it features about 100 songs, and maybe a few more than 100. And I as I listened to all of it, I thought, which song is the most powerful song that describes Merle Haggard? And I chose Mama Tried as depicting your battles with Merle Haggard and your mama putting up with him. Mm-hmm. And
absolutely
that lady's got a lot of patience. She had a lot of patience.
Oh,
wonderful woman. She never gave up on you, did she?
No, she never even considered that, I don't think. I don't even think she worried about anything except my health during the time I was getting in trouble. I think she knew that was just a valley that I was going through. And she never lost confidence in me, and she never was ashamed when people asked her where I was at. She'd tell them I was in San Quentin, where I should be. And, oh, I didn't know that. Well, I won't tell anybody. And she said, I don't care if you do tell someone. And she was sort of like right straightforward. You met her, and she had faith in me, and she had talent, and my dad had talent, and she was betting on the fact that I was going to inherit some of that talent that she wouldn't let my daddy use, and she wouldn't let Daddy go play in the bars. And I say she wouldn't let him. She didn't want him to, and he wouldn't. He always honored every rule that she had. I mean, there was no smoking in the house from the time I was born. He went outside to smoke voluntarily, not by her request, but he knew that.
It happened in your life that I don't understand. You had a friend named Bob Teague.
Yeah.
And you went to see, one of your idols was Lefty Frizzell. Mm-hmm. You went to a place called the Rainbow Gardens. Mm-hmm. And I think Bob talked Lefty Frizzell into listening to you sing, right?
Bob wound up out in they used to have a beer area like it was teenagers inside, but there was a overhang where they could sell beer out of this one place if you was 18 or 21 or whatever it was. And, well, Bob went out in there and wound up talking to Lefty. Lefty was out there drinking a beer in between shows, and he told him, he said he had this kid. I didn't know this until later. And he come back and told me, so I want to take you back to meet Lefty. I'm 16. I'd seen Lefty once before. And another thing, Roy Nichols was in the band. So I had double reason for wanting to go see that show that night. Was the great guitar player Roy Nichols, and it was this singer that I idolized. I'd seen one time before, but never met.
Now this building is the Rainbow Gardens, right?
Sure is. You could dance about 2,000 people in there, and there must have been 2,500 the night Lefty was there that night I was telling you about here. He said, come on back, I'll meet you. I want you to go back and meet Lefty. And I said, not on your life. I said, I'm not going back there. I said, I don't. And he said, you're going back there if I have to drag you or whip your ass. He said, one way or another, you're going back there. And Bob was one of the toughest guys that I've ever seen in my life. I'd seen him whip two guys at once several times. I said, okay. Where do we go? He virtually drugged me back there, and I never was one that wanted autographs or wanted to bother these guys that I watched and idolized and heard. But when I got back there, he was sitting there with Wayne Rainey and Wayne's wife and Alice, Lefty's wife. And of course, I feel like I'm with like a president or something to me. There was nobody that I had ever met in my life that had that much power. And Bob said, this kid here sings like you. And I thought, well, hell, what am I going to sing? I don't know anything except his songs. I can't sing him. I don't want to come in and sing his song. So Lefty said, well, let me hear you sing something. And he handed me his guitar, the one with Lefty Frizzell across the front of it. And I hunkered down in front of him and put, you know, like, got down like this, you know, and set the guitar here and sang Traveling Blues, Jimmy Rogers' song. And I got about halfway through it, and he just stopped me. And there's a big old guy with a cigar come in there about that time. Lefty, time you go back home. You know, and cigar smoke everywhere. And his name was something else. I forget his name. And Lefty said, well, he said, I'm going back home in just a minute. He said, but first, he said, I want this kid to go out and sing with my band. And I looked at Lefty, and boy, fear set in, you know. And I'd never been on stage in my life, let alone with what was probably one of the greatest honky tonk bands in the world. And here he is telling me I'm going to get to go on stage, and with his guitar. And this guy said, ain't nobody wants to see no local kid. And Lefty just real calmly says, well, he said, we'll get on with my show as soon as he gets through doing a couple songs. Kind of smiled at Sneed, Joe Sneed. And so Joe said, well, get him out there. What I'm going to say, get him out there. You know, and one of those deals.
So what did you sing?
I remember singing Blue Yodel number 6. One of these mornings, sure gonna leave this town.
How'd you go over?
They liked it.
You get a big hand?
Big hand.
Did you like it?
It's like the guy that catches his first big fish, you know, who caught who.
Yeah, okay, that's well put. All right, now this is the troubling aspect I have with your life story. You go on stage, you're holding Lefty's guitar, Lefty's looking at you, the crowd loves you. Why didn't this turn you around at that moment? Take you away from the life of crime and head you into music?
I'll tell you why. Same reason that a lot of things happen nowadays. I was I was a kid without any legal representation. America is only free if you got the money to pay for it.
But you're going to have to tell me a little more here.
When I was a boy, I didn't have no money, and I've had lawyers review my problems, and they said I wouldn't have done one day in jail had I had any correct representation. I did do some time for things that I didn't do. And the things that I did do, mainly, the problem was all I was trying to do was something that most kids don't want no part of nowadays. All I was trying to do was work. And my dad passed away when I was 9, and my mother was old, and I didn't want to be a problem, and I wanted to go out there and make my own damn living.
But you had truant officer on your butt a lot because
he wanted me back in school.
And also your mama wanted you back in school.
She sure did. Everybody did. And I just, when I went to school, after I finished the 8th grade, I went to 9 days of the 9th grade. And I didn't learn one thing except that there was 2 good-looking girls in class. One was named Mildred and one was named Carol. And we took a break, and I said, how'd you guys like to go to Texas on a freight train? And they said, boy, that sounds like it might be fun. I'd been on a couple of freights, and it was really an unusual. Hobos were still in America. There were still hobo jungles.
You mean you took these 2 girls to Texas on a freight train?
I took the 2 girls on a freight train, but we didn't get to Texas. But we didn't go to Texas. We went up, and the train went to the right and went across the desert and went to L.A. Got these 2 girls on there. They're my age. They're the same age I am, 15, 16-year-old girl.
Merle, what you have in the back of your mind?
About what you think.
Did you get in trouble for that?
No.
Taking these girls on a train?
No, the girls took me.
Huh?
They were my son. It was, you know, we were the same age.
Did parents get upset?
Yeah, they picked us up in L.A. walking down the street, and they put us in this little place in little jail deal, holding cell, and they called our parents. And parents come. One of their parents came after. My mother didn't have a car, so I got to ride home with their parents. And they thought it was cute, you know, and so there was no problem with that. We didn't know there was nobody harmed.
Did they get after you for, or ask you what your intentions were with their girls?
I told them I intended to molest their daughters, but it never got to it. So
they send you to the reformatory?
I stayed there off and on from the time I was 14 till I was 23.
How many times did you escape?
17.
So that when you got to Quentin,
I didn't give up.
When you finally were sent to San Quentin, one of your problems was that you had escaped so many times.
That's why they sent me there. It wasn't for what I did.
Did that scare you?
You ain't kidding.
When you got to San Quentin, you were there sort of as an habitual criminal then, weren't you?
Yeah, and it was not true. I mean, it was just, I was just running from them, and they're chasing me because I was running. And it just, I never stole anything except a car, trying to get away. You know, and I'm not a thief. I don't want nobody's money.
The fact is, you were going to bring the car back, weren't you?
I brought a lot of them back.
You just wanted to go joyriding and bring it back.
With gasoline and a worse job.
Okay.
I knew a lot of people up there because I'd already been in a lot of trouble, and I knew where I was going, and people there knew I was coming. And when I hit the yard in San Quentin, it was like old buddy week for about a year and a half. All we did was play guitar, and we didn't have to work unless we wanted to. And I didn't realize they were grading me. You know, and when I went for my first chance for parole, they said, looks like you're enjoying yourself in here. And see you next time. I said, what do you mean? He said, see you next year. Denied. No parole. Get out of here. And I thought, whoa. I thought they were going to send me home. I'm just a young kid. I didn't know. I hadn't done anything. They didn't do that. So I'm fixing to write a book about the part of my life that this has really not much to say. It starts right about where we're talking right now.
I thought that 1 week in solitary was probably the most important week of your life because it turned you around. I guess you sat there in that cell and re-examined your life.
Yeah, I did. There was nothing in there in that cell but a slab of concrete, and they gave you a blanket at night. Gave you an army blanket, and there was a Bible in there. And I used the Bible for a pillow, and you'd try to make up your mind whether to fold that damn blanket and lay on it so you could stand it or roll up in it. But something did happen to me. I decided that this was not it. I didn't want to do this the rest of my life, and I wanted out of there. I came out of there and I went down and hired out in the textile mill. That was the roughest job in the joint. Nobody wanted the textile mill. And I worked there for 18 months, and about 3 months after I was there, I ran the place. I ran the whole textile mill as boss. Well, I'd never done anything in my life that was worth a damn up until then. You know, to satisfy anybody. They thought I was incorrigible, that no chance for me to ever turn around. Is the way they looked at me when I went for parole. Well, when I went back after this year in the textile mill, they all took their glasses off and looked at me, and my goodness, what a change. And they said, we'll let you know. And so when the paper came that evening, it said, time set at 2 years, 9 months in, 2 years, 3 months out. That meant time set at 5 years. That meant that I had less than 60 days to go.
You finally get out. And we have something on this show here. This occurred, you got out in 1960, didn't you?
Yep, February 3rd, 1960.
12 years later, I believe, the governor of the state of California, Ronald Reagan, gave you a pardon. This is a picture of that pardon. We shot this picture down at the Country Music Hall of Fame, where you folks can go by, take a look at it yourself. But Ronald Reagan was the governor and pardoned Merle Ronald Haggard. And you said that you were the only man that was ever sent to prison by a town that 12 years later made him the Man of the Year. Called Branded Man. Big hit for you. And you wrote in Branded Man, I'd like to hold my head up and be proud of who I am, but they won't let my secret go untold. I paid the debt I owed them. They're still not satisfied. Now I'm a branded man out in the cold. You told me one time about the paranoia of an ex-con, that when he's out on the street, he feels like everybody knows he's an ex-con by what, paper shoes or other ways. I want you to give me the spirit of this moment when you're first out of prison. And I assume that's why you wrote that song.
The greatest thing that ever happened to me up until the current family that I happen to have right now was getting out of jail. If you can imagine, there's nothing like it. I mean, if you've been in the hospital for several months and you get out of there, or any place you're incarcerated and you're taken away from your family and your friends and the opposite sex, and all that. Well, getting out of a place like that is absolutely the greatest rush I've ever had in my life. And then there's a thing that's not obvious or not apparent that happens. You come out, and all of a sudden you realize you don't have any friends. None. Everybody you knew is gone. There's not anybody there. You don't know anybody's phone number. And everybody you ever knew is inside that place you just walked out of that you hate. And you go through this enormous depression that I've talked to other prisoners about, and it lasts anywhere from usually from the second day out for at least 3 or 4 months. And most, I think 96% of return to prison because of those emotional feelings that happen. Their family, their friends, everything is inside.
Mm-hmm.
So they go back during that 90 days. When I came out of there, I had that same experience.
When guy's first out, he feels like everybody knows.
The last thing in the world you want to do is have to tell somebody where you've been. And it's mandatory that you do that if you want a job. You have to walk up and tell a man, hey, look, I've been in prison. Can I have a job? Well, of course not. And so most ex-cons are that's the end of it right there.
Is this what leads them back to crime?
There's a void out here. They walk out into a place that there's no friendliness.
Do you feel like we force some people back into crime by not supporting them economically, by giving them a job?
Hey, if there's anybody in the house that wants to do something good for humanity, there was a lady done something for me one time. When I walked out of San Quentin, I expected somebody to be there, and she wasn't there. So the 10:30 rush of walking through the gates of San Quentin, in just a matter of minutes, my heart was broke because she wasn't there. I had those two emotions going up and down. And I'm standing on the middle of a sidewalk with $15 in my pocket, wondering what the hell to do. And this voice said, this beautiful female voice, kind voice, said, pardon me, could I give you I turned around and this lady standing with a car door open. And she said, could I give you a lift somewhere? She's sitting just outside the San Quentin wall, just out where the free people are, in a car by herself, asking a guy she knew just walked out of there if he needed a lift. I said, I sure do, ma'am. I said, she said, I do this because I'm wealthy. And she said, my family and my husband would die if they knew what I did. She said, I do this every Tuesday. And she said, I come and take convicts to the bus or someplace. And she said, I've never had one of them ever harm me or act as though they wanted to. And I said, boy, I certainly don't. I said, would you take me over to the ground depot? And I sometimes wonder if she was real.
We wanted to show them who tough he was. How about singing a little bit for us? Could we go through a few songs that made you famous? And I wish, since we talked about Lefty earlier, I think Lefty and Whitey Schaefer wrote a song called That's the Way Love Goes.
One time in a hotel room, and let me tell you about it. You know, Johnny Rodriguez was there, and Whitey Schaefer was there, and Whitey and Lefty had just wrote this song. And I didn't know it. They didn't say, hey, we just wrote a song. Lefty was sitting over behind me on the bed, and he said, let me see that guitar. And he took the guitar and he said, I've been throwing horseshoes over my head. I've spent most all my life searching for that four-leaf clover. Yet you ran with me, chasing my rainbow. Honey, I love you too. That's the way love goes.
You know that song that you didn't like and I didn't like, but Fuzzy liked? Was your first big hit, first top 10.
This old smoke-filled bar is something. See, I still don't like it.
You mentioned George Jones. Didn't George get all upset over some song you did about a rose?
George broke ranks and got on a jet and actually physically came to where I was in the United States on another tour. I was down in Amarillo, Texas, and George was supposed to be in Ohio. We had a rollaway bed in one of the rooms. There's 3 guys in each room. Fuzzy was in the rollaway bed, and he beat on the door, got in there and rolled Fuzzy up in the bed and locked it and rolled Fuzzy right out into the street. He said, Buck Owens and Fuzzy too.
What did George want?
There was a low note on there, and he actually found that good enough reason to jump tour. And he came over to my tour, and he was lost for a few days, and then hit the headlines, and it was a big deal. You know, it was back one of them days where Jones had missed another date, and what are we going to do? You know.
You want to sing a little bit of that song?
Let's see. Once I lived a life of wine and roses.
Merle, you still got a picture on your bus of Hank Williams and Dolly Parton?
Yeah. I take it back. It's still on the bus that it's been on all these years. And when the bus, I had that bus for 14 years. I got a new bus. And I started to take those pictures out of there. And I said, no, I'm going to leave them there. And Dolly's picture's still in my old bus, and so is Hank's.
You fell in love with Dolly one time.
Oh, yeah. I think, didn't everybody?
Oh. You said I was like this is from your book. You said, I was like a schoolboy. I could have carved Merle Loves Dolly on every damn tree in the country if she asked me to. And then you wrote a song, which you got a good song out of this episode of your life called Always Wanting You, and you wrote it for her.
Yeah. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was at Harrah's, working Harrah's, 2-week stand. And it must have been 1974. And I wrote 2 songs that night, and both of them were about her. And we were using each other, I think, for soundboards at the time. You know, I didn't, you know, I didn't have any intentions of ever making anything happen out of this love affair. I knew it was absolutely impossible. You know, I knew that she couldn't help it, I couldn't help it. We had to go in different directions, and that was that. But we could write songs, and so I wrote these 2 songs, Always Wanting You and I've Got a Yearning. And one night up there by myself after I got off work, about 3:30 my time, which must have been around 5:30 here, I called her house, and some lady answered, and I said, is Dolly asleep? She said, she sure is. I said, would you go wake her up? She said, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. And I said, well, I got a song that I've been working on all night. I said, I know she wants to hear it. I said, it's about her. And well, why don't you call in the morning, and we'll play it for her. And she said, she's way down in underneath the cupboard. I said, will you go way down underneath the cupboard and wake her up? So she got her on the phone, and she came to the phone. She was infectious, you know. The thing about Dolly, that I'm going to say something here that maybe has not been said about her. There was so much facade when she walked out that people that didn't get to see her at breakfast. Never really got to see the beauty that she contained. I mean, there was the wig and the, you know, and there was always so much focus on the boobs and all that, and she was a person underneath all of that that the public knew about that was rare. She had this unbelievable talent for a one-on-one guitar pulling. I mean, she could sit there and sing his songs that she wrote since she's 5 and knock you out.
Hey, you were going to sing Always Wanting Me, or Always Wanting You. You're thinking about writing another book or perhaps a sequel to Sing Me Back Home?
I'm thinking about writing a book that, for a lack of a better title, is called From the Bottom to the Top, and it's going to take place during the period of the time that we talked about a while ago, on death row, up until better times begin to occur.
You plan Labor Day in San Angelo?
We have a Labor Day first annual Merle Haggard Festival that we're going to start this year in San Angelo, Texas.
And you're going to do a spiritual album, which I assume will be out in the winter?
We have a great album. It's called If I Could Only Fly. It's one of the greatest songs that I've come across in my life, written by a fellow who passed away 9 years ago, and it's a Blaze Foley tune. And we're trying to acquire that music and do a whole tribute to this guy. And he's, but If I Could Only Fly is the name of the inspirational album you're talking about. That'll be out shortly on Tally.
And there will be a lot of old songs in it, won't there?
There'll be some old gospel music, and there'll be some new songs. There's a couple of songs in there that I do of Albert E. Brumley, and Albert E. Brumley Jr. is singing on there with me.
Okay.
And Albert E. Brumley Jr. was my mother's favorite singer. So,
Merle Haggard, I thank you for being my friend, and I thank you for coming and being on our program.
I thank you for being my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to hold this up. I'm a Hag fan. Merle Haggard.